Hi, I'm Costin Raiu. I'm the director of the Global Research and Analysis team at Kaspersky, also known as GREAT. I got into cybersecurity probably by accident. It was in the early 90s when my high school network got infected by a computer virus, a very nasty one called bad sectors. Unfortunately, none of the antivirus products that were available back then were actually able to clean this virus. So the teachers, knowing that I was somehow experienced with computers, they asked me if I can write an antivirus for it. So that was the beginning. That's how I wrote my first antivirus. And from that moment on, more and more people ask me if I can write a custom solution for their problems, for their viruses that they were encountering. And slowly this turned into a more capable antivirus product, and this is my beginning in computer security. We always strive to do, let's say, successful research to find new interesting things. In a way, what makes something interesting? I guess something is groundbreaking or special in nature if it's about something that is new and it's never been discussed before, and it has the potential to impact a lot of users and a lot of people. So if we identify some new type of attack, not necessarily just theoretical, but an attack which either happens in reality, let's take for instance some kind of a hardware supply chain attack, or maybe a sophisticated persistence mechanism which replaces one of your computer's low-level programming subroutines with malicious code. All of these, they are sophisticated in nature, and they've been, let's say, maybe theorized before, but not seen in practice. And they do have the potential to impact a lot of people out there because there are no adequate protection technologies or technologies that can actually identify these attacks. So whenever we produce a new page in our research book, if you want, we try to look for unusual things, for new things, sophisticated things, pretty much the kind of things which nobody else has found before. If you want a parallel, with Star Trek, one of my favorite series out there, to boldly go where no one has gone before. That's pretty much the goal. I think there's very many researches out there. We published a lot, probably hundreds of different sophisticated attacks throughout the years. I'll mention maybe a very old one, again from the 90s, which is, I guess, interesting in the sense that it gives you an idea of how things happened back then. This was pretty much before, I guess, the whole world learned about security vulnerabilities, about 0 days. And back then, there wasn't much research into kernel exploitation. So I did a bit of investigations in this direction, and I was able to find a 0 day in the Windows kernel that would allow anybody to escalate their privileges and to completely compromise the system. Then I tried to report it to Microsoft, but back then there were no good reporting channels. It was almost impossible to find somebody that would acknowledge the bug and actually patch it. So it took actually several months of emails, and eventually they acknowledged the bug. They even produced a patch for the kernel. And then I remember somebody reached out to me and said, we appreciate your submission. Would you perhaps want a souvenir from us, like a hat or maybe a sticker or a t-shirt? And I said, sure, of course, please send it over. I gave them the address. And it was funny that they never arrived. Maybe, they got lost in the mail. What is funny here, I guess, that many years later, I was at the Blue Hat conference in Israel telling the same story at a Microsoft conference, and one of the Microsoft presidents actually came with a cap and the Microsoft t-shirt, and said like, sorry, we were a bit late with them, but here they are. We appreciate your help and your contributions to making our users more secure. So I think that there's a lot of things, a lot of stories, and I invite everyone to look at Secure List, which is our website where we publish about these stories. And we will always try to find new interesting things and talk about them at our conferences, Security Analyst Summit, or on our website. So historically, naming has been one of the most complicated issues in all computer security. I mean, this goes back to the days of computer viruses and floppy disks. And to be honest, nobody has ever been able to kind of solve this in a, let's say, elegant fashion that everybody else would adapt. So there's been a lot of different naming schemes out there, and I guess that nowadays a lot of companies, they have their own methodologies, systems, and so on. What we decided a couple of time ago was that the person who discovers something new in the team, they get the honor to name it. So they can name it pretty much any way they want, as long, of course, it's following some basic rules. We're not gonna use, copyrighted words or concepts, or what could be seen as problematic terms. And this way, it's a kind of, let's say, race who finds the most things and who gets to name most malware samples, or APT groups, or sophisticated cyber criminal groups. We don't have a specific scheme, which gives more liberty to the researcher, so they can be more creative. At the same time, I think that if you stick to a very specific and narrow scheme, you either will run out of names at some point. So let's say if you use some kind of index table with a limited number of elements, you'll run out of names. So I guess it's more flexible on our side, but for sure there's no universally accepted solution here. Nobody has ever been able to come up with a scheme that everybody else will approve and use. Me personally, I use a lot of inspiration, mostly from the books and the movies that I like. So we do see names out there, maybe inspired, I guess, from Lord of the Rings, or maybe from Star Trek, from Star Wars. I'm a big fan of science fiction literatures and movies. But of course, some of my other colleagues, they're also fans of other things. So for instance, one of our colleagues, I think that his daughter was a big fan of My Little Pony. And that was reflected in some of the funny names that we published throughout the years. One thing we let's say, try to follow is we try to avoid using the same name that the malware author suggested in the first place. It doesn't always work, but I guess the idea here, even from the early days of the Computer Antivirus Researchers Organization, was that you don't want to honor the virus writer by using the name that he suggested. You should use a name that achieves the opposite, as a kind of a deterrent, or to prevent them from producing further malware. So again, naming has always been a kind of complicated issue, and inspiration, it depends on whatever, let's say, you are a fan of. Is it superhero movies? Is it science fiction books? Or maybe, just a Netflix series. Yeah, sometimes people ask me what is the craziest thing you've researched, or maybe the craziest story that ever happened to you. I remember this probably is by far the most craziest one. It happened in April 2016. It was just a few days before my birthday, and it was kind of late. It was maybe 11, something like this, in the evening, when I got a message from one of my colleagues. He wrote something around the lines that we're working on something complicated. It's very big, it's very dangerous, and very, very serious. And I was like, looking at the watch, it's 11. Seriously, is this some kind of a joke? April's Fool's joke. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure that it's serious. So I went to bed, and the next morning I woke up around 7. I opened my computer, and lo and behold, that guy was online at 7 a.m. And this is for people who know him, this is very, very unusual, because he does work very late, but usually he's never online before maybe 12 or 1 p.m. So I wrote him a message and said hey, what's going on? Why are you up at 7 a.m.? And he's like, I'm working on the issue, on the stuff from the last night. So I said, okay, give me some details, send me a sample. So we started looking into that, and it was something rather complex, very sophisticated. I think it was about between 600 and 800 kilobytes in size. So a lot of work was required to understand what it does. Initially, we thought maybe it's some kind of a accidental or random malware, but soon it became obvious that this was not some kind of a random incident. This was actually what later became known as DQ2. And over the next days, we understood more and more. We realized it's a kind of one-of-a-kind malware, and eventually, the funny thing is that the same person, the same guy, he actually managed to connect it to DQ1 and actually prove that it's a new version of that attack. So for us, of course, and for the company, it was a very, very difficult thing to investigate, and of course, the decision to publicly announce it that Eugene made, I think it was the right one. Transparency is very, very important. And here I believe that we pretty much did everything that users expected from us. We published a technical report that was very difficult to write in a very short time. Very thorough investigation, understanding how this was possible. We reported 0 day to Microsoft because we think that probably 3 days were used in this attack. So we wrapped up the investigation and moved on, but still, for me, this remains one of the kind of, let's say, funniest, craziest stories that I lived. I guess the best part of the job is that you never know for sure what will happen today. There will be some kind of a new attack, new form, new exploitation technique pretty much every morning. Nowadays, especially, we see that this cycle of new discoveries, new 0 days in the wild, new maybe hardware attack techniques is getting faster and shorter. Maybe, I don't know, a couple of years ago, let's say maybe even 20 years ago, we would collect around one new malware every day. Nowadays, this number is probably close to 500,000 new malware samples every day. And the amount of sophisticated attacks is also kind of exploding. For somebody working in computer security, this is both worrying and very, very interesting at the same time. We are worried that this cyber arms race will get worse and worse, and the people who will suffer will be the average user. Pretty much people like you who just use the internet for shopping or writing emails or just watching movies. On the other hand, for us, this is very, very interesting because there's an old Chinese proverb which says, may you live in interesting times. I can tell you that the times that we live in are probably the most interesting times ever for computer security. Of course, a lot of things have changed, especially in the last years. So we are dealing with new challenges. There's things like the balkanization of security, which makes it even more challenging for everybody. However, I think that for us, the mission has always been the same. We're here to save the world, is what we say in Great. We want to be able to help people, to help them in a significant way, and to make their lives easier and safer. And this is pretty much what Great is about. The world we live in is very, very complex, especially when it comes to IT security. It's challenging from so many points of view. On one hand, we have more and more attacks, we have more malware samples than ever, but at the same time, I guess that the number of experts in this field has pretty much remained kind of constant or growing very slowly during all these years. So one of the biggest challenges, I guess, has always been how do you keep up with the explosive, exponential growth of threats out there. I guess that people around the world, different people, they found different solutions. For sure, there's artificial intelligence that helps a lot. There's automatization and robots that help us manage and identify threats in a more effective manner. But I guess probably at the core of solving this problem lies cooperation and the exchange of information between researchers around the world. So from the very, very early days of computer security, for instance, the Computer Antivirus Researchers Organization, also known as CARO, advocated the sharing of information between trusted parties. And this way, we can fight the growing threat of computer viruses in a more effective way. Nowadays, this has been taken, of course, to higher levels by different cooperation groups. At the same time, I guess, we are still very, very much limited by things like time zones. During the pandemic times, travel is an issue. Luckily, we have communication methods. We have, of course, things like Keybase, Trima, if you want Teams, Zoom, and so on. And they do make communication more efficient, but at the same time, I do think that we're missing the old style conferences when you could meet somebody face to face throughout the years, and then to gain their trust and to of course develop a trust relationship, and later work together, fight together to save the world in a more effective way. So if I am wishing for something, is that once the pandemic is over, that we get back to the old style conferences and be able to shake hands with friends again, and to see each other, to meet and to discuss how we can make the internet safer. So this is what I wish for. So if I were to start in computer security again, and this is a recommendation to pretty much all the young researchers who want to get more experienced in computer security, I'll probably start by learning a programming language such as C, C++, then move into two directions, reverse engineering and threat hunting, probably with Yara, I would say. On one hand, reverse engineering will always be helpful, understanding how threats operate and how to, let's say, dissect different malware strains. And the Yara will help you to be more efficient at threat collection, threat intelligence, and finding new types of malware and correlating all the points in an attack. So until safer times, join us online through our webinars, join Great Ideas and SAS Online. I hope to see you all there. And of course, wish to meet everybody in person when the pandemic is over.